Hey guys, welcome back. In this video, we're looking at getting to VCF 9, the minimum amount of hardware and resources you would require to get your infrastructure at least partway of VCF 9 ready, or get it to a management domain. Now, there are multiple ways to do that. You can do a greenfield build, you can do an upgrade of an existing environment, or you can convert existing infrastructure into VCF 9 or a management domain with all those appliances. That's what we're going to focus on in this video, and looking at all the minimal amount of resources that you will require and the process to actually get there step by step. Before getting into the demo and the live environment, I wanted to cover a bit of theory just so everyone's on the same page while watching this to know exactly what it is you need to get to the end result that we're going to get to. Let's cover a bit of overview, some resource requirements, and that's from the hardware perspective, and then some software requirements about what's currently in your environment to be able to successfully converge or convert your domain into a VCF 9 management domain. So as I said, we're going to cover resource requirements. We're going to go through the process of converging and converting an existing piece of infrastructure into VCF 9. I'll take you through step by step all of the way, and if we hit any issues, we're going to troubleshoot it together. Now, resource requirements. Oops, jump back. This is everything that we're going to deploy as part of this, and you may already have vCenter. Now, some of these we're going to have to talk about in terms of scale for your environment. In my case, I've deployed, in the notes you can see there, small, singleton, and whatnot. We're talking about a minimal viable product here. The minimum amount of resources you require to be able to get that management domain built. Fleet Manager, in this case, is going to use 12 gigabytes of memory, 4 vCPU, and storage 200 gig. vCenter, I deployed a small 21 gig of memory, 4 vCPU, and 734 gig of memory, storage roughly. NSX, 24 gig of memory, 6 vCPU, 300 gig memory, and that's a single manager, also called as singleton. For VCF operations, 16 gig memory, 4 vCPU, and 280 gig, and the rest you can see there. Now, as I've already said, these are for single node, simple deployment for the management domain appliances. We're going to be doing this depending on what your outcome is. Are you running it on vCenter or third-party storage? For third-party storage, minimum node count of 2, and then vCenter requires 3 for a simple deployment or 4 for a highly available deployment, but I'm not going to be covering vCenter in this demo. Now, for software, you'll see this as well as we go along, but vCenter 8 at a minimum if NSX is deployed, vCenter 9 if NSX is not deployed. If that means you've got vCenter in your environment now and you don't have NSX, it will need to be upgraded to vCenter 9, and we're going to cover that in this video. VCF Installer needs to be downloaded and deployed, and all the OVF parameters need to be filled out. And you'll also see me hit an issue with doing this in my environment and overcoming that issue. Now, you don't have to do this before this video, or if you're trying to follow along, it is required as part of this process. Two different methods of getting those binaries into VCF Installer, either online or offline depot. I'm going to be using the online depot through a proxy connection in this video, and offline depot is also possible if you've got an air-gapped environment. Before we get started with the actual convert process into a management domain, or whatever you want to call it, I'm going to show you a bit of what is currently in the environment. Now, I've got 2 hosts here, as you can see, 1, 2, and they are currently attached to a vCenter, with a data center vCenter, with a VDS or version 8.03, as well as we have them both connected to an NFS data store. Notice it's not vSAN. If you wanted to do vSAN, you need a minimum amount of nodes. 4 is a recommendation, but in this case, we're focusing on having an NFS data store. And the whole point of this is to show you how easily you can get to VCF 9. The first thing we need to do is download VCF Installer, which eventually gets converted to SDDC Manager if you're running it on the same host as where you're deploying everything else. There are ways around this, checkboxes and whatnot, but to keep this as simple as possible, we're going to use the same hosts where everything is going to be deployed. So first things first, we go in and download VMware Cloud Foundation Installer. I've already done that and you've seen it deployed in vCenter. I won't take you through that entire process, but once it's downloaded, as with any OVF deploy, you right click, you deploy your OVF, and then you come in, pick your local file, uploads, and then you find it there and download it. Upload it. It takes you through the basic configuration of DNS, hostname, all that sort of stuff that you should know by now. So I won't cover that. And then once it's deployed, it comes up. Now, there are a couple of options here, and I'll take you through the the start to finish process of this. Now, the first screen you'll see is the login when you do get it finally up and running, and then you log in. Next, you need to, depending on how you're connecting this, either you're doing an offline depot, which means you've got all the repository and binaries on-prem, and typically for an air-gapped environment, or you're going straight to the internet via either a proxy or directly to the internet. In my case, I'm going through a proxy, so I'll take you through that process. Click on depot settings. Now, I'm going to edit the depot settings because I've already done this. I've already put in my download token, which you get from your portal. There's a KB article on that, and I'll put it in the description. I'm not going to cover that. And I've put in my proxy details. Once I've hit authenticate, it automatically says it's connected or not, and then it starts showing you all the binaries. In this demo, we're going to focus on building a 902 or converting to 902. So what I've done is I've downloaded what I need to. I'm not downloading SDDC Manager because remember, the appliance that you first downloaded is going to get converted to SDDC Manager from VCF Installer. I'm not downloading automation because here we're focusing on the minimal viable product to get you to VCF 9. I've downloaded operations and the operations collector, mandatory because that drives your licensing and also statistics and all the ops stuff that you'd normally do with VCF operations or ARIA operations back in the day. And it's still downloading NSX because that is also mandatory for your bring up or your convert. Now we'll let that finish, but in the background, what you should also do is, if you haven't already, log into your VMware appliance of your vCenter and run a backup because that will be required. Remember, we're converting to VCF 9 from version vSphere 8. And to clarify that, or to show you, I am running vSphere version 8. What that means is vCenter will need to be upgraded to version 9 before we even get to the option of being able to migrate or convert into VCF 9. Now, let's get that done. And what I've also done in the background is downloaded the VCF installer, VCF 9, vCenter 9 ISO. While we've got vCenter 9 downloading, I thought it was already downloaded, but once it's downloading, while it's downloading, I'll show you why we need to upgrade it first. Now, remember, there's no NSX currently attached to this vCenter. So what that means is you need to have vCenter at version 9 at least, so that way it can do its thing and go through the motions. Now, to show you this is the VCF installer. I've gone through some of the options or the fields, so that way you don't have to see it, but have a look at this. vCenter with a version lower than version 9 does not have NSX connected to it, so it's not supported, which means either we deploy NSX connected to it, or we deploy or upgrade vCenter. Now, we're going to do the latter. As you see, I'm already downloading the vCenter 9, and we're going to go through the motions of everything else in this installer UI, so that way you're not unsure of how I've gotten to this point. While we're waiting for that download to complete, I'll show you what I've got in terms of DNS records as well. Now, focus on the ones that are down the bottom here that are highlighted. Now, we've got the host records, we've got the vCenter record, we've got SDDC Manager. There's two there, so just ignore one of them. Then we've got ops, we've got the fleet, and we've got ops collector and NSX. That's all I've got configured for now. If we hit any issues and need any extra, we'll go through it together. Now, when you're deploying through VCF installer, it deploys NSX 9 at the highest level. So what that means is the latest version 902 and whatnot. When it does that, NSX deploys and then it tries to add a compute manager, which is an NSX terminology of adding a vCenter. Because it's NSX version 9, it's not compatible with version 8 of vCenter or vSphere, so it doesn't let you do that, which is why this is saying a version 9 or lower is not supported. But if you had already pre-deployed and attached NSX, supported because it already exists and would have converted as is. vCenter is now downloaded. Same process as you would normally do to either install or upgrade. Mount the ISO. You go into the VCSA UI installer. There's multiple ways to upgrade, but this is how I choose to do it. Go to Win32 and we'll right click and run as administrator on installer. Clear cut options, install, upgrade, restore. We're going to go with upgrade. All right, we'll hit next. I'm not going to bother reading any of this. I'll hit accept. Now, the vCenter we want to upgrade is mgt vc8.region2.com. Let's connect. All right. Administrator vSphere local, put the password in, and then I'll put the vCenter unable to find the source appliance at the specified host or vCenter. Sorted out that issue. What it was the fact that it was asking for where the vCenter sits or where the source file sat. I put it on, I said host 1, but it's actually on host 2, as you can see here. Management vCenter 8, host 2. So just keep that in the back of your mind. Next, accept. So what this is trying to do is deploy a new vCenter VM, and then it will move all the data across. All right, let's select the compute resource, let's select the cluster. Here we set the target VM. Okay, this is where I think it will fail. I'll call this new, and then we'll do a rename later. I'm going to deploy a small, just, minimal viable footprint, sure, but I also want to make sure it's stable somewhat. And vCenter is not new to most environments. So I'll go with the small here, size it accordingly to your environment. And it's already got the NFS data store. Hit next. Select the network it needs to go onto. Next. Finish. This should kick off the complete upgrade process start to finish. If we hit any issues, we'll troubleshoot it together, but we'll let that go for a little bit. Part 1 is now done. Now, stage 2, if you have ever deployed a vCenter, is typically your SSO and other configuration type stuff. The first part is just deploying the appliance. You probably saw it go through the upgrade pre-checks, all done. I haven't got any hard stops from by the looks of it. So we've got, is managed by vCenter, yes, make sure the cluster, okay, cool. Yeah, basically just warnings. Yeah, there's not a whole lot that I need to be too concerned with here as far as I can tell. Okay, cool. So I'm going to hit close on that. We're going to go with, let's select the upgrade data, configuration. Yep, so I want, at this point, I'm not too worried about the inventory and everything. So I want, probably the quickest approach would be, I'll go configuration and inventory. I'm not too worried about everything else. For your environment, make the right call. As this is just a lab environment, I'm not too concerned about everything else. So for example, another biggest or the longest approach, configuration, inventory, tasks, events, and performance metrics. For this one, I'm just going configuration and inventory, and I'll hit next on that. I'm going to uncheck this. You can keep it checked if you want. I'll hit next, and away we go. Oh, there's an error. You must acknowledge. Where's my, there we go, missed that. So this is why I said you need a backup. I have backed up, and yeah, I mean, technically you can just click OK or check the box and proceed if you haven't, but it's really good that you do, or important that you do, so you can restore if something goes wrong. And here we go. Password. Go. Looks like it's taken that, and make sure there's no other screens before we let it go. As it said, it takes about half an hour. All right, let's let that go, and we'll come back once it's done. That has now completed. Let's go and have a look and see what it's done for us. All right, definitely looks like 9 because you can see the colors have changed. Must have mistyped the password somehow, but the same credentials got me in. A quick look to make sure it is version 9. There you go, version 9. Still loading. Now, to do a quick sanity check, you can see now that the old one has been powered off, new one has been deployed with new, and I'm going to rename this because I just have some OCD when it comes to that sort of stuff. So I'll name this to old. And I'll rename the new one to just what the original name was. There it is. Done. And for those of you that have used this for a while, you'll know that that's just a cosmetic change in the data store. It's still got the old name. Unless you've got a second data store where you can migrate to and from storage, it won't really rename the file. So I'll just leave it as is for now. All right. Next step, we go into the VCF installer. I'll relog in and we'll go through the process start to finish to start deploying the base foundation of VMware or VMware Cloud Foundation. We've gone through and downloaded all the binaries that we wanted. Let's double check they're all done. So operations, collector, and NSX, all done. Perfect. Now let's go backwards, go home. I'm going to go back to the deployment wizard. and we'll go from start to finish. Here's the first part. Now, if you already had an existing VCF operations or ARIA operations that you upgraded to the right version, you can check this box. But in this case, I'm deploying a brand new operations. Then I've got vCenter. As you saw, we've just upgraded to 9, and I don't have NSX Manager installed. If I had it, then I would have been able to skip that first step that we just did the upgrade for and check NSX Manager and proceed. But in this case, as I said, we're just going with vCenter. I'll click next on that. Going to version 902, give it a VCF instance name and a management domain name. Here, if you want to have a look at deploying the appliances slightly differently. So for example, I want to connect VCF operations automation instance on different DVPGs or NSX segments. By default, it configures it all on the same VLAN and the same subnet or DVPG that the VM management port group is already on. So for example, if I wanted to put it on NSX overlay, if I wanted to put it on a separate VM segment or whatever it may be, you check that box and then you can start configuring different options. Now, the next step is deployment model. Now, we're going for the most minimum amount that we can to get VCF 9 going. You've got two options, simple single node or high availability 3 node, which is for the appliances that it deploys NSX operations and whatnot. And then I've got password rotation. I'm going to make this as simple as possible. It will create passwords for me and we can check those passwords at the end, and we'll also make sure they meet the complexity. I've seen instances where people go backwards and forwards with trying to get the password complexity right. So I'm going to simplify this by checking that box, and at the end, I'll show you how we can then update passwords and lifecycle through VCF operations and Fleet Manager. And I've unchecked customer improvement program. Operation size, small, 4 vCPUs, 16 gig memory. It's got the FQDN there. It's got the appliance FQDN for Fleet Manager, and then it's got the collector FQDN as well. Next, I want to do automation later. Again, we're going for the bare basic. We're not going to do NSX overlay. We're not going to do VCF automation now. This is just so you can get it all set up and going. So I've checked, I want to connect automation later. Next, here we plug in the vCenter details. This is the FQDN that we deployed the vCenter to and the one that we just upgraded. Hit next. Remember last time it gave us an error about the version. Let's see what it does this time. It accepted it this time. Now we're going to do NSX Manager. It's recommended that you do a medium for a production environment, but if you want to do small, do small. Actually, you don't have the option here. So medium, large, extra large. Here you put in the appliance FQDN that we created earlier. I showed you in DNS. So I'm just going to do that and we'll come back. I've populated those FQDNs, one for VIP, one for the appliance. Appliance size, we've said medium. This is basically telling us or asking us if we want to use the ESX management VM kernel port group or VM kernel port to run NSX overlay over. So you don't need a dedicated VLAN to be able to do that. If you uncheck this box, it will deploy it in VLAN only mode, which means no taps. Your choice. For ease of use and also just because I am biased for using overlay, I'm going to check this and we'll move on. Again, if you want to use VLAN only mode, which means you can still use policy and all that sort of stuff, NSX security, you can uncheck the box. Let's chuck in an administrator password for SDDC Manager. Okay. Hit next. All right, I'm going to download the JSON spec so I can easily rebuild this if I wanted to. And then it's going to give you a summary of everything that you've just done. So you review all that and then hit next. It's going to run validation. If there's any issues, we need to resolve those before we can then deploy. It doesn't seem to like the DNS specification for SDDC Manager. I'm going to have a look at the log file to give me a better indication. For your reference, var log VMware VCF domain manager and then the domain manager log on the VCF installer or SDDC Manager appliance is a good place to start. So let's have a look. I'm going to target find the error and then we'll start from there. This is a great first error. When deploying the OVF, it asks you for a hostname field and I put in the shorthand, not the FQDN, which I probably should have because it's not necessarily the VM name. So if I type in host name here, you can see here it's looking for SDDC C. Now, I believe that needs to be the FQDN. I'll update this and we'll come back. And in order to do that, I'll show you the commands, but it's hostname CTL. Working down from the top, I tried sudo first, which it didn't like. And then I su'd into root, ran hostname CTL, set hostname, new hostname, check the hostname again using hostname command, and then use hostname CTL status, and it looks good there. Let's try and revalidate and see if it gets past that. That fixed the first error. Now we've got a couple of others. This one's relatively simple. I inadvertently added a capital letter for the DNS record. So I'm going to delete that DNS record in AD, recreate it with all lowercase, and it should fix that. And then NTP should be configured on the hosts, configure NTP on the host. That's quick and easy. Let's do that now. So if we go to configure, time configuration, there it is. Let's set this up. Oh no, we don't want manual. Let's add the service, NTP, same as my DNS server, and hit OK on that. And we'll start, that's already started, cool. And we'll do the same for the other one. And that should kick that off. Yep, all right. And in the background, I have updated AD. Now let's have a look at the other one. It's talking about Operations Fleet Manager. Did I forget to download that? Let's have a look. Save and close so we don't lose our progress. Debug settings. Yeah, I must have forgotten to download Fleet Manager, so that's my mistake. I will hit download on that too, and that checkbox should be good to go. We'll wait for that download to finish, and we'll complete all the validation again at the same time, so that way we're not going backwards and forwards. Fleet Manager is now downloaded. Now we can go back up and go back and resume the progress. Let's rerun validation and see how we go. It's looking a lot healthier. There are a couple of warnings. Now they're warning about standard switches in use by the host. Let's have a quick look. What I suspect this is remnants of old standard switches that are on the host, but nothing really on them. So DVS at the top there, 2 NICs. Yeah, pretty much what I thought. There's nothing on the standard switch. It's just the old VLAN and what used to be there. Double check both of them. Yeah, so both on the DVS. If we jump back to the VCF installer, we can acknowledge that and it will let us proceed and deploy, which I'm going to do. Hopefully this doesn't take too long, but we'll come back once it's all done. And if there are any issues along the way, we'll hit them together. There we have it. The deployment is completed. So let's have a look at the steps. Convert to a new instance, deploy NSX and configure it. Deploy SDDC Manager, deploy the Fleet Manager appliance, and also the Ops appliance. From here, you can also have a look at the passwords. I'll take this password from here, copy it off, and then we'll log into Ops. Have a quick look. All right, so everything looks good. We've got one data center, one cluster, and so on. If we have a look at inventory, let's go change the view. We've got the instance there. The management domain is there. And so far, everything is looking nice and healthy. Now, from here, what you would also need to do next, because we've imported, ESX is still at version 8, as you can see over here, which means you have to go into lifecycle. All right, so it still says it's at version 5.2. We can run our pre-check, plan the upgrade, and get it to the next version, or version 9. I'm not going to cover that in this video because we were just talking about getting to VCF 9 and having it there. There will be a part 2 of this, so we can do that upgrade together. The other thing we can also look at is, let's go log into NSX. There we go, we're in. I'm just going to skip that and let's have a look and see what it's done here for us. There should be no config aside from the hosts being prepped, and by that I mean the NSX VIBs installed and using overlay off the management network, because that's what I selected. We'll get to NSX in a later video, but you can see here, you didn't have to do anything to touch NSX. We're going to networking, there'll be nothing there. There's no T0 gateway, and there's no segments. Perfect. Last things last, let's have a look at the appliances that spun up, just so you have a better view of that. We're in. We've got the Fleet Manager appliance, we've got vCenter, we've got the old one that we upgraded from, the NSX Manager, Ops Collector, and SDDC Manager. We can do a quick check to see the resources. So if I edit SDDC Manager, we've got 4 vCPU and 16 gig of memory and a total of 914 gig of storage. The collector, 4 vCPU, 16 gig memory, and if we combine all this, it's 140, 144, 244 gig for the collector. Let's edit this one. 416 again, 250, 274 in total for the Ops appliance. Let's edit this one. 6 and 24 for NSX Manager. 300 gig in total for storage there. vCenter, we did do this together, but we'll have a quick look anyways. 17, total of 2.04 terabytes, 4 vCPU and 21 gig of memory. And Fleet, which is where all those ops and lifecycle takes place. 4 and 12, and a total of just under 200 gig. I'll table all this up and you'll see it in the beginning of this video anyways. That is pretty much getting to VCF 9. So if you have a look here, this is version 9020. If we have a look at NSX, it's version 9020. SDDC Manager. Oh, let me show you SDDC Manager as well, because you did see that get converted. So that's 9020 for ops as well. Now, if I just go to SDDC, as you remember before, that's what I used as the VCF installer. Let me just go to SDDC now. We'll see what the front face of the appliance looks like now. It should completely change from what you saw earlier. There you go. So this is now SDDC Manager. Effectively, this is going to be deprecated in later versions. Can't tell you exactly when, but you can have a look through this as well when you get a chance. But effectively everything you see in there, you'll see through Ops, because Ops drives SDDC Manager now as well.